So, Prince Andrew, or rather, Mr. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, may be disappearing from the UK, not in disgrace, but into indulgence, into opulence, into exile wrapped in marble and gold behind palace gates, far from the storm he stirred in Britain.
If you want more unfiltered royal truth, not the palace-approved version, hit like, subscribe and tell us in the comments, are Beatrice and Eugenie breaking the cycle or repeating history? Stay tuned. The tea only gets hotter.
Because while the public sees a man cast out of the royal family, stripped of titles and dignity, the whispers from Windsor to Westminster suggest he's about to land softly, very softly, on the gilded cushions of a £10 million villa in Abu Dhabi. Yes, you heard that right. From scandal-stained Windsor to the ultra-private, scandal-proof skyline of the United Arab Emirates, Andrew appears to be plotting a grand escape. Not to some rustic cottage for reflection, not to a quiet life in the English countryside, but to a desert palace fit for a sultan. 6 bedrooms lined with Italian marble, a private cinema, an indoor pool and gym, gold fixtures, of course, and privacy. Ironclad, media gag, silence enforced privacy. Because if there's one thing Abu Dhabi offers that Britain never will again, it's the ability to vanish in luxury. Let's not sugarcoat it. This is a man running from shame, running from headlines, court settlements, and the unbearable glare of a country that finally stopped protecting him. And where does one go when every British paper spits your name like poison? When the royal lodge is no longer yours, when your mother's protection has passed with her, and your brother, the king, wants you out of sight, out of mind. You go where the cameras can't follow. You go where connections still matter. You go where power doesn't ask questions. You go where exile looks like a 5-star retirement. Enter Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the UAE's powerful ruler and, more importantly, an old friend of Andrew's. The two reportedly go back decades, to the era when Andrew was still respected, even useful, acting as the UK's trade envoy, shaking hands with loyal barons, princes, and diplomats in the Gulf. It wasn't just royal courtesy, it was calculated diplomacy. And Andrew, say what you will, built relationships. Now those relationships are paying dividends. Because MBZ doesn't just offer anyone sanctuary, but he's rolled out the red carpet for Andrew. Not because of pity but because of politics. Hosting a fallen royal isn't just generous, it's strategic. It's powerful. It sends a message. We protect our own. And Andrew, whether we like it or not, is still seen as one of theirs in certain elite circles. But here's the question everyone's too polite to ask. Is this sanctuary, or is it escape? Because while Britain demands accountability, Andrew's packing for paradise. He's trading scandal for silk sheets, accountability for anonymity. And the royal titles? Gone. The honorary uniforms? Packed away. The guards? Dismissed. In their place, absolute silence. A media wall as thick as the palace walls he'll now call home. No screaming headlines. No camera crews staking out his estate. Just the hum of air conditioning and the flicker of a private cinema screen. This isn't atonement, it's an upgrade in everything but reputation. Let's be brutally honest. Abu Dhabi is not a random choice. It's not about the weather or the tax perks. It's about control. It's about constructing a life where Andrew can still live as a prince, without being treated like one. Where his past is conveniently left at the airport, and where no reporter dares to ask the questions still echoing through the UK. What does that tell us about the state of the monarchy? It tells us this: even in disgrace, royalty protects its own. Not in plain sight anymore but in private compounds and diplomatic backchannels. The British public may have thrown Andrew out of the royal lodge, but the world's wealthiest elite just handed him a new kingdom, complete with chandeliers and gates high enough to keep judgment out. But don't be fooled. This is not a man at peace. This is not the quiet dignity of retreat. This is a gilded cage, designed for one thing: isolation. And however plush that cage may be, it still means one thing: exile. He's lost the only thing that mattered more than money: status. His name is mud in the land where he once stood behind the Queen on Buckingham Palace's balcony. Now, he'll look out not over royal gardens, but across desert sand, wondering what his titleless name buys him when the spotlight no longer flatters. He won't be walking into state dinners. He won't be saluted at Trooping the Color. He'll be invisible, hidden, comfortably, yes, but invisibly. And that isolation, it's not just geographical, it's personal. Because where does Sarah Ferguson fit into this? Fergie, the ever-resilient, ever-reinventing Duchess, is watching this all unfold from her own shrinking stage. She too has been backed into the shadows, The glitzy Mayfair mansion she briefly called home, sold. Her media flirtations met with lukewarm interest. Her once insider status diminished, just like Andrew's. Now, there are whispers that she may leave Britain, not necessarily for Abu Dhabi, but somewhere distant, somewhere quieter, somewhere she won't have to keep explaining herself. Because, like Andrew, her past clings like perfume, expensive, artificial, and unmistakable. And let's not forget, she was always Andrew's closest defender. Publicly, emotionally, strategically. Even after the scandals. Even after the BBC interview disaster. Even when no one else would. So if Andrew finds refuge abroad, is it really so far-fetched to imagine Sarah following, in some form, seeking her own reinvention in the shadow of his escape? Because right now, Britain doesn't have much time for either of them. Their social circles have thinned. Their access has been revoked. The country that once bowed to them now barely tolerates them. And if you're not royal anymore, and you're not respected, and you're not wanted, what exactly are you? That's the soul of this story. Not just a man fleeing scandal, but the tragic transformation of royalty into irrelevance. A cautionary tale about what happens when privilege meets consequence and flinches. Andrew's new life in Abu Dhabi may be grand, but it's also hollow. The chandeliers can't erase the headlines. The marble can't wash away the past. The silence doesn't absolve, it merely muffles. And for the monarchy, the implications are enormous. Because if this is how disgraced royals exit stage left with golden parachutes and/or rich friendships, what does that say about justice? About accountability? About the values the crown claims to uphold? Does exile in luxury equate to consequence? Or is it just another chapter in the long saga of royal immunity? The palace may hope that Andrew's departure draws a line under his scandal, that his physical absence will allow them to refocus public attention on duty, tradition, and service. But the public isn't stupid. They know a cover story when they see one. And this is a headline wrapped in gold leaf. So let's ask the real question. Has Andrew found peace? Or has he simply found a newer, shinier prison? Because when your legacy is defined not by your service, but by what you ran away from, no amount of marble, no fortress in the desert, can change the truth. He's not rebuilding, he's hiding. And when the silence gets too loud, even a palace becomes a prison. And when that silence closes in thick, golden, and stifling, Andrew will realize what so many disgraced royals before him have learned too late. You can exile yourself from your country. You can run from the headlines. You can disappear behind the tallest gates money can build ... but you can't outrun your own name. Because the truth sticks. It stains. And no amount of incense burning in an Abu Dhabi palace, no fleet of Bentleys in a marble garage, no chef-crafted meals served on gold-trimmed plates will erase the fact that Andrew didn't just fall from grace, he was pushed hard by a public that had finally had enough, by a brother who's now a king, more concerned with salvaging the institution than coddling his wayward sibling, and by a world that no longer offers blind deference to royal blood, especially when that blood is entangled in controversy. Let's talk about what this really is. This isn't a new life. It's a carefully orchestrated retreat. It's what you do when every door in your homeland is slammed shut and bolted. When charities won't take your patronage. When regiments strip your honorary titles. When you become a walking liability for the firm. It's not just a personal downfall, it's institutional damage control. And that's the chilling part. Because this isn't just about Andrew, it's about what the monarchy chooses to do when its own turn toxic. And right now, it's choosing luxury exile over real accountability. Out of sight, out of mind. Or so they hope. But here's the catch. The public doesn't forget. They don't stop asking questions. They remember the smirks during the BBC interview, the bizarre "I don't sweat" defense, the massive financial settlement made without apology, without explanation. And now, they're being asked to accept that this man, this emblem of royal failure, is simply relocating to one of the wealthiest places on earth, in a palace, gifted by a foreign ruler. That's not justice. That's not reform. That's relocation therapy for the entitled. And if the monarchy thinks this ends the story, they're deluded. Because scandal doesn't just vanish in the heat of the desert, it festers. It lingers. Especially when it's wrapped in secrecy and silenced by state-controlled media. Let's talk about that. The UAE isn't just a haven of wealth and privacy. It's a fortress. A place where the press doesn't pry, where the tabloids don't chase your car, where inconvenient truths are buried deeper than oil wells. For Andrew, it's perfect. No reporters to hound him. No protesters. No icy stares from the British public every time he dares step outside. Just clean air, luxury spas, and a long, uninterrupted silence. But is that peace? Or is it erasure? Because let's be very clear, this is a man who was once ninth in line to the throne, son of a queen, a prince of the realm, and now, he's a name whispered in shame, a footnote in scandal, a royal who couldn't survive the weight of modern accountability. And in this new life, there are no royal duties, no charity galas, no official engagements, only long days, long shadows, and the bitter truth that you can lose everything without ever setting foot in a courtroom. That's what makes this exile so bizarrely hollow. Because it's not justice, it's not redemption, it's escape. A quiet, air-conditioned, very expensive escape. And Sarah Ferguson, let's not pretend she isn't part of this orbit. She's hovering around the same gravitational pull of irrelevance, perhaps less scandalized but just as adrift. The woman once mocked for her wild spending, for her infamous cash for access blunder, for being the royal family's lovable embarrassment, she now finds herself staring at the same exit signs. Her Mayfair mansion, reportedly bought under strange financial circumstances, has been sold. The public events have dried up. The lucrative gigs evaporated. The Duchess of York, it seems, has become a duchess in name only, trapped between a past that no longer wants her and a future that hasn't quite arrived. Is she planning to follow Andrew? It's possible. After all, their relationship is one of the most bizarrely unbreakable in royal history. Divorced, but cohabitating. Publicly estranged, privately inseparable. Even as Andrew's reputation crumbled, Sarah remained nearby physically, emotionally, and perhaps strategically. And now, with the lodge gone, with the UK public ice cold towards them both, with royal doors firmly shut, why wouldn't she leave? Why wouldn't she chase whatever freedom is left in the fading heat of another country, far from the British press, far from the judgment, far from the endless headlines that never seem to forget? But here's the question, what life awaits them there? Because all the gold trim in Abu Dhabi won't give them back what they've lost. Titles can be printed on business cards, but respect is a different currency and theirs is overdrawn. The world may let them vanish quietly, but it will never honor them again. That's the cost of this kind of exile. It's not exile from geography, it's exile from dignity. And while Andrew lounges in his villa, sipping whatever imported luxury is on hand, the real reckoning continues in Britain. The monarchy has drawn a line in the sand, but critics are asking, is it a real stand, or just damage control? Because if this is how scandal is handled, if you get to flee to a palace after humiliating the crown, what does that tell the world about royal accountability? About consequences? About justice? It tells them this: the higher your rank, the softer your landing. It tells them, if you're born into the right family, disgrace doesn't look like prison bars, it looks like imported marble floors and valet parking. And that's the danger. Not just for Andrew, not just for Fergie, but for the entire monarchy. Because people are watching. They're watching how King Charles manages the rot. They're watching how the crown handles those who tarnish its name. They're watching whether royal reform is anything more than a press release. Andrew's palace in Abu Dhabi may have security gates, but it can't shield the royal family from the questions this move raises. And let's not forget, monarchies don't survive on tradition alone. They survive on legitimacy, on relevance, on trust, and trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild itself in exile. So here we are, a prince reduced to a titleless man, fleeing into the desert, a duchess out of time, out of place, and perhaps soon out of country, a monarchy trying desperately to clean house without revealing how dirty the floors have become. The curtains may be drawn, the security may be tight, but this story isn't over, because palaces can hide people but not the truth. And the world remembers. And oh, how the world remembers. They remember the images, the smug grin during that disastrous BBC interview, the clumsy excuses, the astonishing "I don't sweat" claim delivered with all the self-awareness of a man who'd never truly faced consequences in his life. They remember the silence that followed, the settlements, the stonewalling, the vanishing from public life without a shred of humility or apology. They remember a prince who once walked behind his mother's coffin with global sympathy only to squander every ounce of public goodwill in the years that followed. And now, he's disappearing again. But this time, there's no funeral, no family tragedy to justify the shadows. Just shame, just scandal, just silence and a plane ticket to Abu Dhabi. The irony is thick, for a man who once held military commands, traveled the globe representing British interests, and stood proudly in medals on the Buckingham Palace balcony. His final retreat is into the arms of a foreign autocracy. A man who once symbolized British power now seeks refuge in a place where accountability is optional, and money speaks louder than memory. But don't let the gold-plated gates fool you. This is not a rebirth. It's not a second chapter. It's a life sentence written in luxury, a cushioned cage built on the ruins of a royal legacy. A villa can have 20-foot ceilings and imported marble floors, but if it's built to keep the world out, it's still a prison. Because the one thing Andrew can't pack in his luggage is the one thing he needs most: redemption. And redemption doesn't live in Abu Dhabi. It lives in humility, in facing the people you disappointed, in stepping into the storm, not flying away from it in first class. But Andrew, ever the product of royal insulation, never learned that lesson. The walls of privilege were too thick, the mirrors too forgiving, and now, with nowhere left to go but into obscurity, he clings to the only thing left: opulence. He may be gone from Britain. His name may fade from the front pages, but the questions remain. What happens to a monarchy that lets disgrace fly first class? What happens to a family that chooses image over integrity? And what happens to a man who had everything and chose, time and time again, to throw it all away? Because this isn't closure. It's cover-up dressed in Versace. It's silence, not justice. And no matter how many gates he hides behind, no matter how far he runs, Prince Andrew's new life isn't freedom. It's failure wrapped in silk sheets and served with chilled champagne. History will write the final line. But the world is still watching. And the watching world, let's be honest, isn't watching with pity. It's watching with disgust, with disbelief, with the kind of outrage that comes not from surprise, but from exhaustion. Because this isn't the first time someone born into obscene privilege has evaded accountability. It's just one of the most flagrant examples of what happens when power protects itself, not with justice, but with geography. Andrew's exit to Abu Dhabi isn't just a quiet farewell, it's a neon sign that flashes. Consequences are for commoners. And the public feels. You want the truth. Andrew isn't disappearing, he's hiding. Hiding behind gates, yes, but also hiding behind old connections, behind old money, behind the old, rotting belief that once you're royal, you're always untouchable. But he isn't untouchable anymore. That illusion shattered the moment he lost his titles. The moment even his own family, Charles, William, the firm, realized he was a liability, not a legacy. They may not have dragged him into court, but they did the next best thing in the aristocratic playbook. They disowned him, ever so quietly, ever so cleanly, and now they're praying we all forget. But we won't forget, because Andrew's new life isn't an end, it's a symbol. A symbol of everything the public despises about unearned power. It's not just the marble floors or the private pool or the security gates. It's the audacity of it all. The idea that you can go from disgrace to decadence without ever pausing to say, "I'm sorry."